Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the weekly Celts Are Here bulletin. It's myself, Declan, joined by Quinny. We've got a special guest this week. We've got Josh McCafferty, who you might know off the site, does the player ratings for us. Josh, it's the World Cup break, but good to have you on. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Cheers. Looking forward to this. How are you all doing?
Right, we're fine, and it turns out you and I sit 2 rows apart at Celtic Park. We've only just clicked in that, so sometimes these
Oh,
things just seem to happen. But let's go right into it. Quinny, over to you. But we've spoke a lot about transfers since we've started this pod. Obviously, that started in the summer. We've came through the months of Champions League football, domestic football. The rumours are going to ramp up, but this one was no rumour. It just kind of came out the blue yesterday, and then he comes in a 5-year deal. Really good to get business done quickly again in the window.
Yeah, well, I think the sniff of this rumour happened like 3 weeks ago, then disappeared maybe a month ago. But yeah, really came out of nowhere. And as much as it really did come out of nowhere in the sense that, like, in the morning it was like, oh, Kobayashi might be signing, and then Celtic announced it like pretty quickly thereafter. But the manager was on record the day before as saying, we want to go into January, we want to get our business done nice and early. That's the way I'm built. That's the way we've been progressing so far, and that's the way we're going to carry on. So to see, the manager say that on what must have been the Tuesday or whatever, then on the Wednesday we sign a guy, it's just it's fantastic, and then last night and today, obviously, we're linked with another one. So, yeah, really excited to see Kobayashi come in. And I put a wee tweet out. I think, once he's been incorporated into the squad, I think he's probably going to come in as number one left centre back for us.
Yeah, Josh, they're kind of few and far between in world football. We've obviously seen Carl Starfelt, Moritz Jenz both feature at left centre back for Celtic. They're not too frequent. One that I watch all the time is Martinez at Manchester United. It's just nice to have that kind of naturally sided left centre half. Just in terms of the transfer, it's a 5-year deal. Did you maybe think after January last year our business in the G League was done, or do you think we're still probably going to explore that market again?
I think it's an interesting one because Ange certainly knows the market very well. And I think the fact we brought in 4 players last year knows he trusts the players from there, and potentially we'd bring more in and we have this window. I think the fact we've got it done so early is a massive positive. It gives him a month to kind of settle in before the actual competitive action starts, for him at least. And I think, as you mentioned, the fact he's left-footed is a huge positive as well, because it's great in build-up play and stuff like that, rather than having kind of players that are right-footed playing on that left side.
Yeah, absolutely. And Quinny, that's been something that the manager has obviously looked at. When Celts Are Here spoke to Dan Orlowitz, he said one of the kind of outstanding trademarks of Yuki Kobayashi is his play from the back. Something that Ange Postecoglou will have definitely identified. As well as that, he's 22, he's coming in. We know there's probably still a bit to go in development. But again, it just speaks of the manager's reach, because this just wasn't a market that we were touching. You've now signed 2 players from the one club as well, and Vissel Kobe, who would already get the Kyogo deal done from. And to bring him in a 5-year deal again, it is just complete, hats off to the manager once again.
Completely. And I think by all accounts as well, it's a free transfer. I'm not hearing anything about a deal, and we obviously know the contractual situations that Japanese players have been finding themselves in since we've been on the scene anyway. So, but I think it's a fantastic. See, the thing that really excites me about this transfer is, Declan and Josh from doing the player ratings as well. But like, for me, the left-hand side of the pitch is the best. Taylor, Rio on left centre mid, and then Jota when he's fit and available. So putting a left centre back in there that can play better balls to them, like, I don't think it can be understated at this stage. Like, it's a real upgrade on tactics for us having that guy in there, because Jens got some plaudits early season for doing like a couple of Van Dijk runs, as we called it, and that's great. But I think, like Josh was saying, when somebody does go into that space, but they are right-footed, they're always going to lean on the inside and then come into traffic and come into space. Whereas having that guy with a left foot that can find the wide option a bit more naturally, again, I don't think it can be understated how much better it can make us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You see, one of the biggest thing I think in Starfelt's game that frustrates me is when he does that kind of mad pivot and he's foot where he's trying to pass the ball. But it's interesting, when we start to look at the kind of the situation which it creates, Josh. We've got 4 centre backs in there already. None of us has watched Kobayashi at a great extent. The manager have did his scouting and whatnot. Just as us as fans, what kind of situation do you think this creates? We know that Cameron Carter-Vickers, I don't think it's for shifting. We paid £4 million for Carl Starfelt. He's had his injury issues. Stephen Welsh is a Celtic Academy graduate. He's featured at times this season. And Moritz Jenz is a lone player. Do you think it means that one of those goes next summer? Or do we stick with 5 centre-halves?
I think it probably does mean one of either Jens or Welsh goes next summer. I think the most likely would probably be Moritz Jens. I can't really see us extending that loan deal or buying him permanently if we've just brought in Kobayashi in this window and we've still got Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers there. Stephen Welsh, a lot of fans don't rate him. Ange seems to like him. I think he's came through the academy, he knows the club. We were offered a significant fee from, I think it was Udinese or Toulouse in the summer.
Yep, both.
I think if that option maybe came back in the summer, it would be an interesting one to look at in terms of Stephen Welsh. But yeah, the centre-back situation is quite interesting right now.
Yeah, and Quinny, but we speak a lot about players' development and getting game time. Welsh has come in really at times for Celtic this season, but when somebody's been out, whether it's been Starfelt, we know Jens came in a wee bit late, which meant that Welsh started the first game of the season against Aberdeen. Do you think there's possibly, the manager's thinking here that for Stephen, he maybe needs that time away to develop and maybe get to that other level, or do you think he's hitting that level? Because I'm a big fan of Stephen Welsh. I think it's always important to have that core of academy players throughout your team. Your Tony Ralston's, Callum McGregor's, James Forrest. But do you think it means that Welsh goes out, or do you think it means that after Moritz's loan deal's up, it's thanks for your service and cheerio?
I personally think what's probably going to happen is we'll see Kobayashi is not going to play immediately. I don't think. I think we're going to try and sell Starfelt and sign Jens, because I think the manager picked Jens. I think it's the whole try before you buy thing with Jens again, like we had with CCV and Jota. I think so. I think the fee's been reported around like $3.5 million or something, which is punchy.
Yeah,
that's quite punchy. So I could see us been put off by that. Don't get me wrong, but if we could get somebody to take Starfelt off our hands for maybe washing our face on the deal, maybe there's a bit of profit on it. I could see us just flipping the switch and then keeping Jens. The manager, like Josh is saying, I think the manager really does like Welsh. And I think if somebody bigger and better was to come in for Carter-Vickers in a year from now, 2 years from now, it's such a great opportunity to have Welsh here now and then just walk straight into that potentially. So the manager likes forward planning. He likes having that kind of almost that kind of dynasty in the squad of running so many options and positions so that no matter what happens, injury or whatever, that we can kind of keep moving forward. So I think Starfelt is the one that ideally, if the stars aligned, we would probably try and get £5 million for or something, keep Welsh, sign Jens for free. We've got Kobayashi for nothing, and obviously Carter-Vickers was done last summer. And then that's fourth. And because Jens has done very well, I think, at left centre-back, being right-footed. Mm-hmm. But of course, if so required, Welsh has played there as well. There's a bit of versatility between those two as the backups. And then you get your designated left and right, So I think that's the ideal scenario, but I don't know how realistic it is to sell Starfelt for proper money after the season.
Just to kind of flip that back, Quinny, obviously, Carl Starfelt just kind of came in automatically as Ayer departed. Last summer, he was one of Ange's first signings. Do you think maybe the manager didn't have too much a say in that? Obviously, we know how important Starfelt became last year in that centre-half pairing with Cameron Carter-Vickers, but that kind of point you make in Moritz Jenz there is, he's definitely the guy that's went out and got him. Although Starfelt's given a really good account of himself under Ange Postecoglou, when you maybe look at the numbers in there, Welsh 22, Kobayashi 22, Moritz Jenz has still got a bit to go at 23. Starfelt's one of the older ones at 27, and it kind of bleeds into that conversation we were having last week with Josip Juranovic, that if a player's maybe hitting that point, where do you think, this is going to be the ceiling in terms of money, and anything back, it builds into the player trading model. As Celtic might be looking at, if you get a good offer in for somebody like Starfelt, you maybe think at the age of 27, okay, on you go, because that can be reinvested. Do you think there's possibly some thinking in that?
Yeah, I think that would definitely go in line with what we've heard them say, what we've seen them do since Postecoglou's been in, for sure, in terms of the strategy in the transfer market. But yeah, I think Starfelt's the ideal one. I don't think the manager would want Welsh to go. Welsh is probably the easiest backup for us to sell, but because he does have promise, he does have potential, and particularly you mentioned Udinese there, with the success we've had with Scottish players in Italy this year, like, you know, you'd probably get a few people that would take a chance on Welsh on that for a decent fee for an academy player for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, Josh, then that, you know, that age type factor maybe comes into it there? I mean, you know, 3.5 million might be a wee bit punchy, but it's certainly within our means to buy. And if Ange maybe sees, you know, Moritz Jenz, it's easy to forget that he's only 23. He's probably still got a bit to go in development. We know we've thrown him in at the deep end this season with Champions League football and whatever else. Do you think there's possibly the thinking in that he might just keep everybody in there, and then, you know, if that bid comes in for Starfelt or whoever, the covers there and you're not scrambling about, do you think that's even possible? Because that's what I would probably say would be my preferred option. Stick with 5, absolutely, because you've got 2 in there that's young players, and Welsh is obviously happy to be a squad player, and Kobayashi's coming out to develop.
Yeah, I think that could definitely be within the thinking. When you look at Carl Starfelt, he is 27, coming into his peak years at playing football, and you don't want to kind of leave him till he's 29, 30, and clubs aren't willing to pay a significant amount for him. And then he's probably going to just stay, and he's not going to progress more in his game once he gets to that age. And definitely, like you say, having the option of Jens, Kobayashi, both the kind of same age profile, they're just going to get better when playing for Celtic, under Ange especially. So I think, yeah, that would definitely be within the thinking. And it's obviously, as we've said, something Ange has been talking about, the player trading model, looking to buy in young. Then as they develop, you go on to sell them for significant amounts. It's kind of what looks like might happen with Josip Juranovic as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, both. It's an interesting one to keep your eye on. As I say, I think I would prefer to just stick with the 5, because you don't know what can happen with injuries. One goes out and that's you left, the only 2 covering. And if you rotate as much as we do, and that's a position the manager doesn't like to change a lot, it's still good to have the backup in there. And if you've got players in and around the team that's quite happy to be squad players, that's important, because sometimes that can be a really hard sell in the market. But something you touched on, Josh, was how early Kobayashi comes in, and Quinny, you know, this means he's going to get a long time to integrate in with his teammates. I think he'll probably join up with them in that warm weather training camp in Portugal, so he'll be in for a shock when he comes back to Glasgow and he's freezing his up at Lennoxtown. So that might be a bit of an experience for the big man. But yeah,
Sure.
I think that's really important too, because obviously last January we brought in Daisen, Yusuke and Ryu just at hug him in the knee, which gave them 3 weeks before that first ball was kind of kicked against Hibs. It lets them bed in a wee bit, lets them get used to the teammates, expectations from the manager. And it means that whenever he's registered, don't think it with the Derby game at Ibrox, but from then onwards in January time, he'll be able to feature.
Yeah, I think he'll make a huge impact whenever he does play this year, because like we've seen, particularly with Rio last year, you know, coming off the back of a full J-League season, you know, they've got some tempo, they've got some momentum, and yeah, this international window is a bit longer and, you know, the rest of it. But I think when he does play, like his statistics, like I've got a video out on my channel at Kobayashi, because I just think he's going to make such a huge improvement to the team. Like his passing statistics into the final third are incredible, you know, like passes into the opposition, over 7 of them per match, accurate long balls about, and this is a pass like, you've probably seen his highlight reel when you're looking at those kind of diagonal ones that you see play. You get about 4 of them a match out of him, and then just under 5 passes into the final third. So built up possession, you've banked the team into their final third, and then you're sliding a pass into a winger or a forward. You know, he's getting close to 5 of them a match at Vissel Kobe, who, you know, actually had like super, Dan was saying this when you were speaking to him, but they had super high hopes of this year. And the thing that I really like about Kobayashi, when you really look into him as well, is like Vissel Kobe, a lot of their promise that they built on was their centre-back pairing, and he's been playing really effectively next to another guy called Kikuchi. And this guy, Kikuchi, is basically like Carter Vickers, but he can score about 5 or 6 goals a season from corners or whatever. So the guy's already used to playing with another guy that's very similar to Carter Vickers, you know, and he's just under 100 matches at the moment in top flight football. And, you know, but with what we're chatting about already, like, I'm not sure, like you say, I don't think he's going to play against Rangers. I think we'll see Starfelt probably, or maybe Jens, something like that, because the manager and the club are incentivized to decide between these 5. We only see space for 4, you know, so you kind of keep a guy on the shelf all season and then try and sell him for money. So guys will need game time to put the highlight reel together, as it were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some Sam always managed that, though. If you think of James McCarthy, he's already got his wee moment when he sprints to that ball at St Johnstone. So he's probably maybe somebody in a similar mould, but come up with an answer. And just having a look there, Kobayashi, 41 appearances this season, which is also something you want to be looking at and saying, yep, consistency's there, no real injury issues. And at the age of 22, to play over 100 appearances, I know that was something that was kind of directed at some of the young Spanish players yesterday in ITV's coverage, which I thought was quite funny. You know, Gary Neville said before the game, this Spain team doesn't have goals in it. And then he's talking about inexperience in the team, but you've got boys at Barcelona that's played over 100 games for them. So it just doesn't stand up at all.
Yeah.
But I think it's an exciting signing, and I just hope it's not the only one that we make this January. But, you know, once again, it strengthens the squad, which is something, Josh, you know, how many times have we heard Peter Lawwell say, when you go into a transfer window, you want to come out stronger? How many times did that not happen? I think you are now, even if you probably lose one, and say it is Josip Juranovic, for instance. This brings Alistair Johnston into the equation. You're probably happy if he goes out, he comes in, Kobayashi's in. We're going to get onto a striker, but we're seeing different parts of this you know, house that the bricks are still continuing to build, whether it's the garage or whatever, the back garden's getting tidied up, whatever you want to describe it as. Everything's coming together, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's a really big change from, like, say, the position we were in 2 or 3 summers ago when we're scrambling around on deadline day for signs for the squad. And, like, when you look at it that way, in the last 2 kind of transfer windows, I don't think Celtic have signed anyone on deadline day, if I'm correct. This summer we certainly didn't, and I don't think we did the January before. So it's great to see the club carrying out their business early, getting it done. And as I said earlier, we've never seen, it's like unheard of for someone to sign a player in November, because it's still November now. And having them in for January, it's so strange for me as a Celtic fan. I'm only 17 years old, so to have that, it's very weird, but very good at the same time.
Yeah, it's very good at the same time. I mean, that's a really good point there. I mean, Americans haven't even tucked into their Thanksgiving turkey yet, and we're signing players. Happy Thanksgiving to Cameron Carter-Vickers and his teammates. Hopefully it's not too much of a hangover tomorrow before they scalp England at the World Cup, which I think we're all hoping for. But, you know, moving from America, bit north to Canada, Quinny, you said you've watched Alistair Johnston a good bit. This came out last night. Obviously, I then tuned into Belgium, Canada. And, you know, without watching him, had you said you'll sign one of these players at this Canada team, you'd have thought any of these guys could probably play Ange ball, because they gave Belgium a right good game last night, and it was quite similar to watching Celtic the Champions League. So many chances, couldn't take them, got that early penalty. You think Alphonso Davies, yeah, he'll score, he'll tuck us away, he knows what he's doing. Big Courtois pulls off a save like he did against Judah in the Bernabeu. They get beaten the game. Canada, not a bad team at all. And as I say there, would you agree that probably any of those guys, maybe David Witherspoon apart here, I don't really want to be giving credit to David Witherspoon, but majority of them could probably fit into a Celtic team, including Alistair Johnston.
Yeah. Eustachio, Tejan Buchanan, Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, I'd take any of them, no problem at all. They definitely don't have a goalkeeper that would get into our team. I can tell you that for a fact. Canada, that being. But Alistair, I managed, you know, by accident, it now turns out. But yeah, I watched Alistair Johnston quite a bit this year because through the fantasy football stuff I do, I follow Wanyama still. I've got Wanyama in a lot of my American teams and whatever, and he'd been bossing MLS this year, scored really well.
Was that the same team, CF Montreal?
Yeah, so Wanyama's been in great form as like vintage Wanyama, destroying midfield and playing the ball forward and all the rest of it. But Alistair Johnston is, you know, he plays a lot of kind of right mid in a 3-5-2. Wilfred Nancy has this Montreal team set up. If any of you watch European football and you watch Inter Milan, same kind of formation style, tactical kind of layout. It's obviously not the same. It's not Inter Milan, but you know, same kind of layout. And he's on the right wing. So if he is going to be a right back for us, and I say that because I'll lead into something in a second, right? But if he is going to be a right back for us,
I know what's going to come. You're going to say about Celtic playing 3 centre backs just after that chat. Right, okay.
Yeah.
No, on you go, Quinny.
Then he's much more, I think, of a Bernabe than a Taylor in that respect. That he's much more going to bomb the line, really get up and down it. And his statistics are incredibly high for penalty area entries, accurate long balls, which are basically like crosses most of the time. So very direct, very attacking. And you've probably seen that against Belgium. He was very busy against Carrasco on that side of the pitch. You know, he was very busy in that match. But he can play centre-back, and he has played centre-back probably to more aplomb in MLS than when he's played right-back. So what have we profiled him for? Is kind of is what I would throw at you guys, you know. Is it free? But I never even thought about that. I just thought, is this more pressure at centre-back potentially, or more depth?
Well, we know that, you know,
As well as the
and
right back, of course.
Yeah, well, you know, Angie said in loads of interviews, you know, if you're to pick your formation, he always says it's 4-3-3, that's what I go with. But, you know, there's no reason why you probably couldn't look at that as a potential option. If you've got 5 centre-halves in and around the building, you've got a player in the building already like Alexandro Bernabei. Not that it's going to be every week, but it's something that you might want to look at to see, because, you know, Josh, I'll flip this over to you. Watching Celtic the Champions League this year, we went right at teams and whatever else. Playing a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, whatever way you want to look at it, might give your centre halves that wee bit more protection, and still allow you to make those, you know, bits of play that you're after. Because when you're playing, whether it's 3-5 or it's a 5-3, your wing backs can still bomb into that inverted role. They can get up and down the flanks and whatever else. And everybody, you know, goes on about Yakimakis and Kyogo playing together. We're not saying on here manager tear up his formation style and whatever else, but just looking at the kind of pieces that you've got there. If you bring in Alistair Johnston, talking sakes of Kobayashi, and you keep your 5 centre halves there, you're obviously still going to want Bernabei to feature at times and get game time. It might be a potential thing he looks at, and maybe a cup game or whatever else.
Yeah, that's true. It certainly offers that fluidity if we're able to go from a 4-3-3, make a couple of changes in a game, then go into a 3-5-2. Especially in Europe. I know we've not got any more this season, but potentially next season that could be something that's a positive, especially if you're 1-0 up going into the last 10 minutes, you're holding out for a lead, then you can switch to a 5. That would certainly be good. And Alistair Johnston, I think he's able to, last night certainly played on the right side of the 3 in the defence, I think. So that could be a definite positive if he was to play there and then further on in the right of like a 5 in midfield or something like that. So yeah, I think it's certainly an interesting signing in as well, the formation. Well, I think we'd done it once. It might have been away at St Johnstone on Boxing Day last season.
Yep. I know what game you're talking about. The Beaton and Jimmy McCarthy masterclass in there.
Yeah. So it's not something we've not done before. So it could be interesting to see if maybe, like you say, in a cup game or something like that in the early rounds of the Scottish Cup, maybe it's something Ange looks to implement.
Yeah, that game was grim, because I remember the kind of build up to the week before it. The Hibs game was coming up in the League Cup final, and you were thinking, are we going to get along to this game? Are we going to get in? We got to the Cup final. I ended up getting COVID. Missed the St Mirren game away. Watched it in my bed here, absolutely ill, dying. And then the Boxing Day game, obviously no fans at it. It was grim. You were thinking, oh no, is this it again? Back to COVID ball, and Giovanni's probably with that with his hands. But yeah, football can be a very short game for some people. Don't know why I said the word short there. Just kind of came into my sentence. But yeah, that's one. I actually forgot about that game. Vasilis Barkas played in goals for Celtic that day. One of it was just due to the fact we were very, very short. If you remember the team we put out, St Mirren, I think Owen Moffat played for us that night and whatever else. So
Remember that.
we were short. But it is, as you say, something the manager's tried before. Whether it was just due to a lack of personnel, I don't know. But yeah, I think Joey Dawson also played in that game at St Johnstone. The forgotten man, Joey Dawson. But
I was just thinking as well, as you were speaking there, like with Alistair Johnston, the whole right centre back thing as well. Like, if you think about the way Juranovic plays, like that whole inverted fullback, you know, as when you were talking about that, kind of the way light bulb went off for me. But him playing in a back 3, like geographically on a pitch, isn't really that different to the whole inverted fullback thing.
No,
like he does have the pace, but that you need in that role to maybe break the line or go an overload at the drop of a hat. So maybe it's been identified because he's got that. He's played here and he's played there. That, you know what, doing this job for us will probably he'll probably hit the ground running because it's not too different to what he's doing anyway.
Yeah, so we'll compare him to a kind of Joshua Kimmich type player that he can fit in there. We'll go for
Perhaps,
that.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, no, you're right. You're spot on with that there, and that's, you know, but without even thinking with it, you pull things out of chats like this that, you know, having already been quite able to tuck in from that right back position into right centre half. It's a two steps forward, and you're still going to be doing your job at right centre, at right back. So Yeah, but there's absolutely potential for that to happen. Maybe it's why he fits the profile. But Josh, just in terms of the profile, 24, he still have a bit to go. He's played to over 30 times for his country. He's at the World Cup here. And it's also, somebody said a really good point to me the other day in that any scouting done, I think, for January, and maybe not the summer, but certainly for January, will be out with any World Cup games, watching any teams in the World Cup lately. If we're going to sign an Iranian player or a Saudi player, it's already been identified before World Cup, probably. Alistair Johnston's probably been one that has been identified before the World Cup, and it's actually quite nice. It's almost as if, that you get this as your starter of him, getting to watch him in 3 games, potentially, maybe more, for Canada, and then coming in. But he certainly fits the profile. I know there's a lot of noise around Josip Juranovic. It was interesting that Celtic put out a Celtic TV interview with him the other day. Whether that was just good timing or bad timing, I don't know. Maybe it was trying to tell us something. But if he is the person that's to go, that bleeds into the conversation around his age, the peak, playing for Croatia at the World Cup. Although I wasn't that impressed against Tunisia. Tunisia or Morocco? Tunisia, was it?
Morocco, I think.
Morocco. Tunisia played Denmark. Up against Morocco the other day. It just kind of fits into that. And then when you're looking at Johnson, you're maybe thinking 2-3 years and do the exact same. And that's that succession planning that's been lacking at Celtic that you say earlier on that you're still getting used to just now because of the players that we're bringing in and how much cover we've got and just the way we're doing business.
Yeah, it's great. I think Johnston is a more than ample replacement for Juranovic. I think, as you mentioned, the experience he's got already playing for his country a lot. And I think as well, the MLS season has just came to an end. So it's similar to the Kobayashi situation where he'll be sharp from games, just playing the World Cup, hopefully ready to hit the ground running. Because unlike Kobayashi, Johnston probably will be playing a lot if Juranovic does depart. I mean, you do have Ralston there, but you'd think Johnston would probably be the first choice. I think he's got 4 goals, 4 assists in the MLS last season as well. So he does have that attacking output, which is great to see as well. And like you say, it's great that planning has been done already and that he's not just one we've just seen at the World Cup. Oh, there we go, we'll have him. Yeah. It's been in the planning in the background for a while now, which is good to see.
Yeah, and it's all, as Quinny says, looking at the matrix of him, everything else, it's how the manager wants to do his business. And again, it's a market, Quinny. It's not even something that we spoke about yet, that we've not touched. We've not touched a major league player in a long time.
Gutman and Harper.
I actually think who would be the last, if any?
Gutman and Harper, the last 2 I remember.
Gutman and Harper. Right, okay, yep. There was another boy in that mix, wasn't there? Gutman and somebody else, but that would be the last time. Perez, that's it. So that'd be the last time we touched it. But again, who would be the last time we visited that market and they actually played first team football for us properly? I know Cameron Harper came in for a couple of COVID games, but it's just not been something. We've not really went to Major League Soccer and explored it too much. And again, this talks about the manager's wide reach and doing, his job probably above and beyond, what other managers probably do. He's spoken in interviews before about taking that time to explore different cultures of football, looking at different parts of the world. We know we've got Mark Lowell in there who's got a great knowledge of world football too. And again, it even excites you that, is this going to be one of many coming from MLS for Celtic?
I'd love to see a shop much more in MLS. Like, I watch a fair amount of MLS, and I can't remember if it was with me and you, Declan, or if it was on my channel or whatever, but like, there's a few players in MLS I would love to see us pick up that I now that Kobayashi's in, I don't think we're going to get Tolkien, who I thought would have been a great shout for left centre back, left back, whatever. But the thing with MLS over the last couple of years, like, it gets like the thing with MLS is it gets a lot of slack. It gets a lot of shade thrown at it, right, because of the whole no relegation thing, basically, right? But to be honest with you, see, for developing youth football, MLS is it's primed to be one of the best leagues in the world, because see what you don't get, and I'm just saying this to kind of the wider you, if you don't watch MLS, is see when teams know their season's dead, they all just start playing their best players and their academy players. The manager's not worried about getting relegated. The manager will be told you're sacked or you're staying, and they can plan for next season. And then these young players, like, they're really starting to MLS, outside of the top 5 leagues in Europe, MLS has sent more players to the World Cup than any other league. It's an absolute hotbed now of South American talent as much as North American. And like, Almiron Almiron done a lot of damage because he went to Newcastle, was one of the best players ever in MLS, and went to Newcastle and for 3 years was a meme. Obviously now he's Messi and everyone's loving him, but so there's been some bumps and all that in the road and whatever, right, with MLS. But if it's I would much rather shop in MLS rather than J League as a overall kind of food chain element. If we're to put a league below us that we're going to go and just cherry pick the best players from, MLS is definitely one I would be very excited to see us go back to time and again, because their talent ID is amazing, their facilities overall are amazing, and the conditions and everything that they prep young players into, they get them significant game time. And talking about Alistair Johnston playing for Canada, right? Canada's not an amazing level, right? But see CONCACAF, see if you watch CONCACAF international football, it is Scottish Championship level, right? So if you are going to Nicaragua and you're going to Honduras and then you're going to Trinidad and Tobago and you're playing on these like crappy pitches that are the back of the Govan high schools or the high schools around Motherwell and wherever else you're from listening to this, then when you come to Scotland and it is freezing and then you're playing on the pitches we've got, I don't think it's going to be that much of a shock to somebody versus somebody coming from Japan, if that makes sense, where your international football life is maybe a bit different and all the rest of it, yada, yada. So English speaking and all the rest of it. I just think there's so many ingredients in MLS that it's a great sign of things to come, potentially.
It would be, and obviously, Josh, we've already shopped in the South American market, bringing Alexandre Bernabeu over. Alistair Johnston will be the first time I've, as we say, shopped in MLS for a good while, and a player that's kind of first team timed, and it does give you that excitement that there might be more to come. And it's, the manager's reach, because I think a lot of people have said for Celtic to really compete at the top level of Champions League football, to continue to develop, to make that player trading model work properly, you need to use the markets well. Something that we've did well to an extent under Ange, have been pretty much impeccable with it. But it's about pulling those top talent in. They can go into Champions League games, and then you can sell them on for a decent fee, and that's just about the whole workings of the club. That's how much that kind of goes into it, because if you to compete with some of the top teams in Europe, if you're bringing in talent and you already have, as Quinny called it, that kind of food chain type thing, if you're bringing in top talent to develop your team and it's making you money that you can then reinvest, that just makes for many good years at Celtic. And it's about really acting like a top football club, which you're doing at the moment with Ange at the helm.
Yeah, it's great to see he's opening up our options. Like you say, we've not shopped in MLS in a long while. And it has been proven a lot of top talent has came over to Europe and succeeded, like Serginho Dest, Weston McKennie. There's quite a few that have done well in other leagues and as well. I think Alistair Johnston does have a UK passport, I believe.
He does, yep.
That on Twitter today, so that could be good.
Cool.
As well. So, yeah, I think it's a great signing and great to see he's using the MLS. I think I wrote an article up about a year ago looking at that and saying how there's quite a lot of value in that market and things like that. So, and they do have great facilities, great coaching, and it's a league that's certainly coming up in the world, like you said, Quinny. It looks really good, and it's exciting that we're kind of exploring that market now, as well as J League, South America, and not just going for loan players from Premier League clubs.
Yeah, our shopping in League One or the Championship, and just kind of keeping your options very narrow. It's good that we're opening up and having a look. Just in terms of other, potential transfers, striker, I think everything that came out from that Sydney Super Cup, Quinny, was, players not taking their chances once again. And it was a frustration. Our performance, you and I were on after the Sydney game, that only Kyogo played in that game up top. We see Yakimakis come into the Everton game. But it's very frustrating that you're creating so many chances, you're having so many shots. You see that in the Champions League, not converting it. I've been wanting to try and defend both guys, and that the experience of this Champions League level will hopefully hold up going into next year in European football, whatever level that's at. But maybe you don't want to take that risk that if it's maybe just not for them at that level, you might need somebody else in. Do you think Celtic need to get a striker in this window?
I think somebody at the club is on record as saying like the defender and striker were the two kind of priorities going into like any future business. So I think where a lot of Celtic fans, and maybe between ourselves, will disagree is what profile of striker are we going to go for as a number 3? Do we go for somebody that's potentially, when they come in the door, a genuine threat to Giakoumakis and Kyogo? Or do we get somebody that when they come in the door, they're like Liam Labada, like, high ceiling, highly thought of, could do great. If it doesn't go great, then no one's going to really cry about it. Or do we try and bring somebody through from the academy, like the Vatas, and these are like we've lost Ben Doak obviously to Liverpool that we spoke about. Is there somebody there that we could maybe not neglect and actually bring through and like
the name I've got
through?
is Robin Hack from Bundesliga 2. He's
Hack?
19 appearances this season, 9 goals, 6 assists.
I know that name.
Have a wee look at him. I'll flip it over by giving him a wee look, Josh. In terms of him, he can play as a winger and he can play through the middle. Do you think that's the type of player that Celtic's going to likely go for? We know that Giakoumakis is basically an out-and-out striker. Kyogo played a lot on that left-hand side for VCL Kobe, but has, primarily played through the middle for us. But we've seen Haksabanovic, Maeda, Jota, they can all play either side or the wing. I think that's something, that we know that the manager likes, and that'll probably be in his thinking, that it won't just be an out-and-out striker he's bringing, it's a striker come winger.
Yeah, I think that could be good to have someone with that versatility that can come in, play up front, probably predominantly would be their main position, but can also operate out wide as well. Because like you say, Giakoumakis is an out-and-out striker. You would never see him running up and down the right-hand side, whipping balls into the box. So yeah, it would be good to have someone that's versatile and obviously get more for your money in that situation as well. And it will be interesting to see if we do sign one this window, what kind of profile we go for. Is it going to be, like you say, Quinny, a young option, or is it going to be maybe a veteran or someone who's experienced, maybe in Champions League level, who can come in, is kind of happy to not be the first option because, let's be honest, they're hardly going to really be starting over Kyogo. So I think that'll be interesting to see. And I think Robin Hack, I think I've seen his name before a couple of times, but I'm not sure who he's with now. German.
Is it Bielefeld in Bundesliga 2?
Arminia Bielefeld.
Yeah.
I definitely recognise his name as well, but I can't work out why. His stats look very good. In Bundesliga 2, he looks very good. The one thing that's caught my eye, when I'm looking at players for the first time, I like to see kind of, especially in Europe, where they were kind of brought up, as it were. And this guy's got good pedigree. He's got 17 caps, German Youth International, and he came through at Hoffenheim. And Hoffenheim have done very well with talent ID and stuff like that over the last 5 or 6 years. So I know his best stats that I'm looking at here, that they are all Bundesliga 2. He's got Nuremberg here, a goal in every 3 games in his first season. This season, he's looking at a goal in every 2 games or so. After Bielefeld last year in the Bundesliga did horribly bad, get relegated. So it looks like he's got the raw minerals here, and this could be quite a low pressure signing, I suppose, from the fans and the club's perspective. I don't know how much money this would cost or how the deal would be structured, but he's not going to come in and no one's going to expect much. Like, the fans aren't going to be saying, "Oh, this guy should be starting straight away" or whatever. And maybe that's the route to go.
Is that a concern, Quinny, or would you rather that Celtic in this window potentially go out and maybe spend, I don't want to say 5 million because we spent 5 million in Albion Agate and we know how that turned out, but a significant sum. You probably say that if a player like Hack was to come in, it's just a name that's been branded about just now and possibly fits the profile. If a player like him was to come in, you call it kind of low risk. I understand what you mean by that, but would you rather be maybe go out and spend that wee bit extra, or is that the wrong thing to do to Giakoumakis and Kyogo, or is that only going to up their game?
I think the manager is mega loyal to ones that he brings in and sells the dream to, if you know what I mean. Like, come play for me, and this is the team, and this is what we're going to go on and achieve. And I don't think he would rug pull anyone in that sense. Like, just go and for no reason other than we've got money to spend and might as well just go and spend 10 million quid on a striker. I don't think he would. I don't think that's in his makeup. I don't think that would feel quite contradictory to some of the stuff that we've seen Ange demonstrate. But I do feel that we're talking about missed chances in friendlies. We're talking about missed chances in the Champions League. If we've got money, we don't need to buy a midfielder. Really now, if we do get Alistair Johnston, we don't need a defender for the next year or two either. For me, it is just really solve the goals problem. And maybe that's just a cohesion thing. Maybe the guys just need to play together for another 3 or 4 months, and all these missed chances will be a myth of the past. And, remember that was a thing? And we can go and get a Robin Hack or a young guy and bring them through. But me now sitting here with how ambitious the manager is and how amazing he's done in the market in terms of getting on-pitch success for the players that have been brought in, because that's where we've really dropped the ball over the last probably 15 years, is get guys in and then on the pitch they're not scoring, they're not playing or whatever. I would back him with 15 million for a striker, If we said, Ange, here's 15 million quid, go get any forward you want. And if he said, no, I don't want any, then fair enough. But I would be really happy to see who he brought in.
Yeah, that would be exciting, but I don't fancy some of the Celtic board members' blood pressure if you spent 50 million quid in a striker. But it's an interesting one, it's just one, it's a name there, might come back, might go look this podcast and go, look, they told you, or might go back and say the free idiots talking about somebody who was nowhere near signing for Celtic, but you never know. To go from the top end to the pitch to the bottom, Quinny, you've said on here before about a goalkeeper, and Josh, since Joe Hart's came in, brought great experience to the team, really, really important. I go back to, it was either Jablanek or Alkmaar, he made what you would kind of term a kind of normal save, but everybody was up off their seats after what had been watching the season previous with goalkeeper bingo, when you were wondering who's going to play in goals next, and we thought that Neil Lennon was going to let that be a hat. Oh, Connor Hazard, oh, Scott Bain, oh, Vasilis Barkas. But we eventually got somebody in, we had our first choice goalkeeper. But one thing, we'll all be looking at is Joe Hart's age. And, he was the first to admit that when he came in, that he's not a sweeper keeper. I think having somebody of his expertise and experience in around the club is invaluable. But do you think that's another potential area of the park that we might be looking at? Maybe this summer, not necessarily January, but might be somewhere that we're looking at for a long-term option, because you don't want to leave ourselves short. We want that long-term planning. I'm a fan of Ben Seagrass, but I just don't think he's going to ever be that first choice stick on Celtic number one. Do you think that's somewhere else we should be exploring maybe come the summertime as a long-term kind of younger goalkeeping option?
Yeah, I think that will be definitely within the thoughts and the planning of Ange, because we've seen what he's been saying about got to plan, get the long-term stuff in his mind. So I think Joe Hart, he is 36 now. He's done very well for us the past year and a half. He's brought that continuity between the sticks. He's reliable. He's a great leader within the dressing room as well, which is a huge positive, because the profile of the squad it's quite young. So it's good to have someone like Joe Hart in there with his expertise and experience. However, as you say, he's not we could probably get a better goalkeeper on the ball, I would think, and potentially that's something that we'll be looking at. If someone does come in, it would be interesting to see if they go right in ahead of Hart, which I don't think they wouldn't. I think they would be bled in over a kind of period of time. But it's interesting as well, Connor Hazard just came back for his loan at Helsinki. I think they won the Finnish league.
Yeah, he was player of the year too.
Yeah, player of the year. So that would be interesting to see what's in store for him. However, I don't think he's kind of the greatest with the ball at his feet either. He did do as a turn in that quadruple treble cup final, but I think it would be better to maybe get someone in who's comfortable with ball at feet, the modern goalkeeper, as you could say. And it would be interesting to see what Ange would have in mind there.
Yeah, I'd much rather kind of a chain of keepers just now, where maybe Seagrass is where Bain is. Whoever you bring in is maybe going into the point where Seagrass is, and Hart's still your number one. I think that's an important point. Quinny, it really relates to what you were saying there about that loyalty to players he's brought in. Maybe Joe Hart wasn't somebody identified right away, but it was an important signing to bring in. He's certainly been somebody who you can trust. That's been something over the past few years that Celtic managers have did well with, and that they have that goalkeeper position stuck down on Neil Lennon, Fraser Foster. I think back Brendan Rodgers coming in and wanting to bring in Doris de Vries initially too. We've not really had that ever proper super keeper type thing that I've maybe tried to do in recent years. Fraser Foster was always a fantastic shot stopper. Doris de Vries probably that's the closest that we've had to that mould, but he was coming to the end of his career, and it was up here I think for a pension package when he eventually signed for Celtic. So just looking at it, I think it will be something getting into the thinking. It's important to get a guy like Joe Hart in and around the building. He admitted after, I think it was the Leipzig game, and he has that bit of mishap, and so it's the way that the manager wants us to play. He's already said himself, he'll try and get better at it and whatever else, but at the age of 35, 36, you're not wanting to learn far too much. You don't want to learn anything that's too excitingly new. So, I think come summertime, that might be something that we're maybe looking at. Would you agree?
I totally. And I think with the way goalkeeper development's happened over the last couple of years, there's more and more keepers coming through that can take to this type of football, quite easily. It's a kind of generational thing. And we've seen some goalkeepers, we've seen quite a lot of goalkeepers over the last 2 seasons, young ones in particular, get snapped up in different moves. Like there's a guy that springs to mind now called Okoye, who was quite a highly touted, I think he's maybe even the Nigerian number 1, and he was playing in Holland. Anyway, Watford signed him because he's got very good stats for passing, but he just sits on their bench. Gabriel Sloninas came through in MLS as well at Chicago. He's like 17 or something, which is maybe 18 now, but incredibly young. Huge promise, and Chelsea have snapped him up, and he's probably just going to get loaned out everywhere until he comes of age. So I think with this move, I think when we go and get one, I don't think it can just be who's available this summer. I think we need to wait and see, there's the next one. No one's quite got me yet, and let's go get him and bring him in. Because as much as we were saying Fraser Forster was just a shot stopper or whatever, they still need to shoot. They still need to be a bloody good goalkeeper as well,
Absolutely.
And we've seen that with Trubin, because he's a fantastic shot stopper for Shakhtar, but he can still play long balls, he can still play passes, he can still deal with a press, because that's all we did to them. So there's this, the myth of they either do this or they do that is kind of disappearing with this new generation of goalkeeper, I think. So this has to be a very much there's the guy, we see him, we found him, get him. It's not just who's out there.
Yep. And that kind of precedent's been sent by guys, at the very top level, like your Ederson and Alisson, who have got it all.
Yep.
And if you look around the other kind of top leagues, David De Gea has probably moulded into a better keeper with the ball at his feet and whatever else. So, yeah, it's one, I think, as you say, if you can identify it early on, go and get it. Don't hang about for it, because they will likely, any top talent will get snapped up. We put a wee message out to some of our listeners to ask if they had anything for us to chat around. Even, I think we thought, maybe a bit hard to make up content, but when Celtic throw in that curveball signing, you're absolutely sorted for a good hour. So we're fine with that, but we want to bring this in. And we'd asked that question, and somebody had got in touch with us to say that they believe that Celtic Park needs a bit more investment in the infrastructure around Parkhead to come a multi-use venue, concerts, rugby, etc., etc. He asked what the panel's who was on it. He said, we have the planning, which is midway in a hotel, museum and shop. We had a planning pass for along the road for a training facility, but we seem to be lacking to put a shovel in the ground and starting it. He said, all additional revenue seems which in long term would help the club, decent fan zones outside, better parking facilities around the stadium, etc. But what's your take on this? Because, Josh, at this point in time, majority of people will be saying any kind of extra revenue that you've got. This was certainly the line from Celtic last year. Myself, Craig, both attend the fans forums, and we get to talk to the board and hear everything that's kind of going on in these circumstances. Basically said any extra money that's coming in is going right into the first team. That was their line last year. Do you think that when you start to get that kind of that fluidity where teams fine, you're rolling into the Champions League, it's fine, the money's coming in and everything else, the parts are all working together, that you then look at these projects and maybe think, can we do something there? We know that new bar facility's opened in the southwest corner at Celtic Park, which allows people to go in and have a beer before the game. I think it was great at the Ross County game. It might have been Dundee United the week before, that you could go in from 11 o'clock and where you can usually get a pie. You could go in for a beer at 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock. I think that's a great step forward from Celtic's perspective. We know Scottish football and alcohol, it's been banned for 42 years. And so the fact that people could actually go into the stadium and buy a drink, 1 o'clock, you're chased out, it's 2 hours to kick off. But it needs to be small steps in that. It mentions their fan zones. That would be great, but you'd have fan zones that are selling Coca-Cola and whatever else. You need to make these steps forward. Fan zones are great for maybe those summer Champions League kickoffs, but when it comes to this type of weather, you don't really want to be standing outside in a tent unless it's got nice roasting toasty heaters. So just in terms of the overall picture of it, where do you think Celtic should be looking here? Is it get everything stable in the football department, then look at these, or do you think that both can be done hand in hand?
I think, first off, I think the football team has to be the priority, what's happening on the pitch. And like you say, if we're getting that revenue coming in for selling players for high profit, continually qualifying for the Champions League, you're getting that money each year. I think it's something then you can look at potentially over the next year or so we can. I think the UK and Ireland's bid to host Euro 2028, I believe it is, Celtic Park wasn't included. So potentially, if we're looking to upgrade the stadium, maybe that's something that could be looked at, looking at using Celtic Park for international tournaments and things like that. So that could be an interesting point in there. In terms of the bar, I think that's a great point. It's a great idea. It's great to have that going, especially despite the fact you're leaving 2 hours before kick-off. However, it's a great step forward and something that can hopefully develop over time. We know Celtic have been kind of one of the leading forces in trying to get kind of alcohol back at games. So it does have a kind of bad name, bad rhetoric in Scotland, but like you say, 42 years, that's a massive, it's a generation almost.
Yeah, two generations almost. It really is two generations. I mean, my dad's born 67, banned when he was 13. He's now, approaching 60, so, and he's never been able to legally, but have a drink inside. It wasn't boozing at 13 for any doubt. I know Glasgow got a bit of a bad reputation, late 70s, early 80s, but yeah, it's pretty much two generations, isn't it? Football fans here, and you need to make small steps forward. But I think you're right. The priority should always be the team in the park. But Quinny, that's an interesting point. I think a lot of this issue stems from the South Stand, which the board have been very much upright in saying, from my opinion on this, it's been something that's been continually brought up at fans forums. That stand was opened in 1971. That is over 50-year-old, that stand now. It's had the facelift in 88 that you see when you woke up. But apart from that, inside, not too much has changed. I think a lot of the issues in there stems from, the washing facilities in the dressing room, the press area space that they've actually got, and other things. But, at this point in time, it doesn't look as if it's changing. I mean, Chris Mackay's been saying, for a long time now at fans forums, you're totaling upwards of 40 million to sort out that main stand at Celtic. It's a hell of a lot of money that you probably don't have unless you're maybe doing another share intake, which maybe the club just don't want to do just now.
I think because of the whole Celtic Way stuff that they've done as well, like to do anything to that stand, you're then going to just throw all that money down the drain, that you've just spent developing that for the last couple of years. So I think there's a wee bit of, you open a can of worms with the South Stand because it's also going to have to connect to the rest of the stadium as well. And then there's a kind of integration of systems, and I'm sure there's much more actual structural stuff and engineering that goes into all this, but it's probably not as easy as I would think it is. It's just to take that bit out and build a new one there and try and keep it clean around everywhere and make sure you don't break anything. It's probably much worse than that, and that's why the expense will be so high. But I was thinking, just as we were listening to you guys there, like I do think Celtic are always frugal, right? And we're not being, we're being quite smart transfer business wise. We're putting our focus on the pitch these days, but the Celtic Way, the disco lights, all that stuff came in when we were cleaning the league every year. When it was it was no shakes. We were going to scoosh it. We had, we'll sell a guy for 20 million in the summer. We'll sell a guy for 10 million in the summer, and everything was just so. The last couple of years, that's got a bit rocky.
And the Celtic Way also kind of tied in with the Commonwealth Games too, didn't it? In terms of that whole infrastructure project that, I maybe think would they have probably spent that type of money on something like that had, an event like that maybe not came along.
Probably not. For sure. But I think it would make, like, the thing with Celtic Park, right? I love it, and I love the character around the whole place. Like I've been going there. Like I think when you said earlier, Josh, 17, I'm 34. So I've been going to Celtic Park like for the thick end of 30 years, and every bit of it. I've sat in so many seats. I've had tickets to so many games. There's always like, I remember I was in that stand for this game, or I remember when me and so and so went to the game. We were sitting around there, and all the rest of it. And I think we all get quite nostalgic and attached to the place. But see, when you go to other stadiums as well, or you go and travel around Europe and you go and visit other places and other grounds, elite places. I know a lot of fans went to the Bernabeu, for example, this year. Stadiums now feel like a much more of, it's maybe one of the things that people don't like about football, right? But it's much more of a hospitality kind of situation now where, you're a customer and you're getting value for your money and you're getting comfort and you're getting facilities, and it's a nice place to be. And going 2 hours before the game isn't a problem because it's actually a nice place to be and your pals are there and you might bump into somebody that you grew up next to or whatever. Like I went to Man City twice this year or last year, and the very first time, it was on one of these like tourist tickets, where it's like cheap as hell and they're quite easy to get. And I was in this like lounge thing. I can't remember the name of it, but I was quite lost. And when I got to the door, I was just like to the guy, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm in the right place. I just gave him all my stuff. And then he just kind of looked at me all weird. And like with the tickets I had, and I was absolutely panting my chance. I was like, oh no, like what's going on here? And he's like to me, where are you from? Dead serious and everything. Security guard suit, the whole works. And I was like, oh, Glasgow. And he just swung the door open and he's like, welcome to Manchester. And then I walk in the door and there's 3-4 people standing there. One of them puts a hang over your head, a wee lanyard. One of them gives you a programme. One of them gives you this, gives you that. And then you're in there and it's food and booze. The tellies are on. Sky Sports is going on. It's comfy. There's Wi-Fi. And I'm like, this is quality. This is a great match day experience kind of thing, you know? And Celtic Park, as much as we love all the stuff that makes it what it is, there's definitely things that we could all enjoy more of.
Yeah. Well, that's something I think, and one of our listeners' point here, that, you know, that additional revenue streams, which in the long term goes back into the kitty. If you've got more corporate spaces and whatever else, you're making more money. I know for the Champions League, for instance, that there was that much of an overspill. They didn't have the space in Celtic Park, and they had hospitality packages in West Brewery for the games, the Champions League games. But do you know what? You'd much rather that you've got your punters inside the stadium than you would having to go away down there and get bussed up and everything else that comes with that. Yeah. So it's one that, you know, I'm sure that the board are aware of, but I've just got this tweet up here. At the AGM, they actually said 60 million, upwards of 60 million to modernise the main stand. And then if you wanted to increase capacity on it too, you'd be looking at even more than that. So, you know, for that, I think that's been a lot of the issues around Celtic Park actually stem in terms of the in-stadium facilities. I'm thinking of the press room, for talking's sake, at Old Trafford, which has, you know, the nice wee comfy bit. It's like a university lecture hall. You've got a plug to put in, you've got the Wi-Fi there, you can stick your Ethernet cable in, it's absolutely fantastic. Celtic Park's just not got those facilities. It's probably about at this point making the best use of what you've got until, you know, any development maybe comes there. But even kind of on moving away from Celtic Park, if we go down the road to Barrowfield, we know that's meant to be a project. There's a new pitch and whatnot down there. But you probably want that moving quickly because we're using Excelsior for the women's team and the B team. And Josh, you know, for people that live out that way, Airdrie, Coatbridge and whatever else, it's great. It's on their doorstep. But you're probably wanting all the teams to be as close to Celtic Park as possible. If they're not playing in there, why not be playing at Barrowfield and try to get a bit of a crowd in? Because then really nobody has any excuses, because folk can get to Celtic Park, they can get there, and it's, you know, to me that's just something that we really need to be doing. Is it's a base for both these teams, because at this point in time they'll probably go to Celtic Park for meals and whatever else, but then it's Excelsior, it's not their ground, it's Airdrie Stadium, and that's our base. I'd much rather that we're in somewhere like Barrowfield that's Celtic branded. It's what all those elite teams, you know, Quinny, you've said have got, you know, Cities, Leicesters and whatever. Lennoxtown's a wee bit out the road, they'll be up there constantly, but I think Barrowfield would be a great kind of base for both the women's team and the B team.
Yeah, I would agree. I think especially the fact we are playing in Airdrie Stadium, we're obviously having to pay money to play there. So it's much better if we're in our own facilities, like you say, the Celtic brand and stuff. And it would encourage more people to get along if it's nearer them. Like Airdrie's a bit of a way away if you're looking to get there by train for people who can't drive, or getting there by bus. Whereas if you're at Barrowfield, it's in Glasgow, isn't it? So it's quite easy access as well. So I think you would attract more crowds if the B teams in that played at Barrowfield, for example. If Celtic are away one weekend, the B team's on, they're at Barrowfield, just go and watch that. It's much more easy than having it in Airdrie. So I think, that's something that they could look into and would be interesting to see what they could come up with.
Yeah, it's one maybe to keep our eyes on. And even again, you know, mentioned ticket office, hotel, that was something that we mentioned, but when that was discussing the league and whatever else. I think the priority just now is looking at the Champions League and whatever else and the riches that comes with that, and try to build the kitty up, if you will. If you're not having another share issue, you know, that money needs to come from somewhere. I think I'd much rather that we're on that kind of that even road, travelling alone. We know that Champions League's going to change. I think it's season 24-25 possibly. There's going to be changes made to the tournament. Maybe it's to be 23. And it's one to maybe keep our eyes on.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, they're changing, you know, formats and whatever else. Whether that'll be good for us or bad for us, we don't know. But you don't want to be ploughing on with this and then you end up with yourself in a difficult financial position. So
Yeah,
it's one
the
that I
club are
think
so averse to that.
Yeah, and you need to have a balance to it. As paying fans, season ticket holders, and whatever else, you want to be going along and watching a successful team in the park. That should always be the priority. But as well as that, you want all the different facilities and whatnot that will help the club in the long term future. But it's one to keep an eye on. Just very lastly, World Cup. Sure, we've all been watching it and whatever else. Yesterday, really enjoyed Japan. Germany. I
Wait.
was buzzing for Dyson at the end. I was actually quite gutted though, Quinny, because when he scored that winner, he jumps over the barrier and the whole team are around him. And Dyson was actually one of the last to get to him. Whether he was knackered after playing, but I thought, with your pace, you should be the first man that's there to be going absolutely mental with him. But just one of the kind of, we know that this directives came from FIFA at the World Cup with the added time. Just what your thoughts very briefly on this, Quinny. Celtic Park, we're very used to teams time wasting. We've now got VAR, which takes an age to make decisions, subs, celebrations, whatever else. I really welcome this added time that's getting added on, and I would really like to see that incorporate into our games. I know, as well as that, our kind of something that's special about Celtic is we like late goals, and if you're adding 8-9 minutes onto a team that's got a mantra of we never stop, that can only be a good thing for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many people will welcome this in the Scottish game, to be honest with you, because I can
David
easily see.
Martindale certainly won't.
Yeah, I can easily
get another
see.
list. Robbie Nielsen will be another one that won't.
see if you think about the amount of time, like in the average Scottish game, like the ball's dead, the ball's out of play or whatever, adding on like 10 or 14 minutes in some matches in this league maybe increases the actual time the ball's in play by like 50% or something. So I think the amount of late goals obviously almost goes without question, but the amount of game results that will change in the last like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the added time, will be an endless source of debate and different opinion. And wasn't that 2 weeks ago against St Mirren, and it wasn't that last week against Ross County, and it wasn't that, for all fans, I'm saying, not just any team in particular, or wasn't that when you had this ref, and
that's just the cinch, isn't it?
So hopefully, we keep scoring more goals, and I think kind of like the 5 subs rule, it really does just suit us for where we're at now. 5 subs, absolutely. When it get official, like the size of squad we want to run with, keeping them all happy, getting them minutes. 5 subs suits us better than any other team in the division. And this, again, will just suit us better because the number one tactic against us is kill time, waste the game, And if we're going to get all those minutes back, then that strategy is flawed. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Josh, what's your take on it? I mean, as we said, you and I sit 2 rows away featured at Celtic Park. You see everything that I see in terms of time wasting. It's frustrating. Goalkeepers taking an age to kick the ball out, battering their boots off the post before they take a goal kick, moving the ball from one edge to the other. It's really frustrating. I think having this, possibly added in would stop that. It would make for better spectacles. Even the people that's travelling as away fans, it's not great to watch. Time wasting and whatever else. And if you're adding that wee bit on extra to a game, for me, you're really getting your money's worth in it. It's good. It's good for us anyway. That if you had that extra time in games, we're going to go right to the end of a game, and if we're maybe looking to get that extra goal, it'd be a welcome thing for Celtic.
Yeah, I think it's a huge positive, to be honest with you. Like you were saying, Quinny, the main tactic against Celtic seems to be to slow the game down and stuff like that. And if we're having that added on minutes, it brings sort of justice to that teams cannot waste time, and that's not, they have to find somewhere else to stop us. And as well, like the squad we have, the depth we have in our squad, the fact that games are going to last longer, we can bring more players on, get more players minutes, and I think it's a massive positive for not just Celtic but for football in general, because football is an entertainment sport and you like to sit and watch it, and if people are just being unsportsmanlike at every opportunity, it's not good to see. And the fact that there's now going to be added on minutes for that, it's a big positive.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, thanks to all our usual listeners, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, wherever you listen to us. Your support is much appreciated. Josh, it's been good having you on. Hopefully we'll have you on in the future once again. Hopefully myself and Quinn will be back next week. We know in Glasgow that you can have your job one week and you can lose it the next. So hopefully that won't be the case for both of us. But as always, thanks to our listeners.